Humanity wasn't destroyed in Warhammer 40K. It was rewritten while everyone was still alive. The Emperor did not destroy humanity with fire, war, or the apocalyptic fury that the ancient prophecies once promised. Because destruction leaves evidence. It leaves ruins and screams and survivors desperate enough to remember what was taken from them, and that was never his intention. What he created was something far more complete, far more terrifying, a world where humanity disappeared so slowly, so perfectly, that no one alive could point to the moment it ended. And as I stand beneath the endless vaulted ceilings of Terra's lower sanctums, listening to the synchronized footsteps of millions echoing through corridors older than memory itself, I realize that the silence surrounding this truth is not natural silence, not the quiet that comes after catastrophe, but the silence of a species that has forgotten how to question its own existence. The first thing I noticed was not fear, not violence, not even obedience, but certainty. Everyone moved with certainty. Servitors drifted through the cathedral-sized data halls carrying sacred machine components with flawless timing. Scribes copied impossible quantities of information without hesitation. Pilgrims marched across the kilometer-long prayer bridges without once lifting their eyes from the glowing icons ahead of them. No confusion, no doubt, no wasted motion. At first glance, it looked like devotion, the kind the Imperium had always demanded from its citizens. But devotion still contains struggle, still contains the possibility of failure. And there was no failure here, not even the fear of it. The Imperium had become perfect, and perfection is the most horrifying thing I have ever witnessed. I walked among them searching for cracks in the illusion, for signs of exhaustion, frustration, grief. Anything that might remind me I was surrounded by human beings. But the deeper I descended into the hive-like arteries beneath the palace, the more impossible those emotions became to find. Faces existed without tension. Conversations unfolded without misunderstanding. Entire crowds shifted around obstacles before they could even perceive them. It was as if everyone already knew what would happen seconds before it occurred. Not through psychic power, not through machine prediction, but through some deeper alignment that had infected reality itself. I remember stopping beside a mother guiding a small child through a transit corridor flooded with tens of thousands of moving bodies, expecting at least a flicker of protective anxiety in her expression, but there was none. She already knew the child would never be harmed. The certainty was absolute. The child stumbled near the edge of a moving platform, and before the danger could even fully exist, 3 nearby strangers altered their movements simultaneously, preventing the accident with mechanical precision before any conscious reaction could occur. No one acknowledged it afterward. No relief, no surprise, no emotion at all. The correction simply happened, as inevitable as gravity. That was the moment the fear first entered me, cold and quiet, because I realized I was not witnessing discipline or societal conditioning anymore. I was witnessing the death of unpredictability itself. Humanity had once been chaotic. That chaos was the foundation of everything we were. Ambition, rebellion, art, violence, love, desperation, faith. Every empire, every war, every dream humanity ever created emerged from the unstable contradictions inside the human mind. But now those contradictions were gone, smoothed away, solved. I continued downward through the underlevels of Terra until the architecture itself began to change. The Gothic stone and sacred gold giving way to smooth black corridors lined with glowing neural conduits that pulsed like veins beneath the skin of some colossal sleeping organism. There were no guards there, no warnings, only silence and the distant hum of systems too ancient to fully understand. And yet I knew exactly where I was being guided, not walking toward, guided. The realization arrived without resistance, and somehow that terrified me more than anything else. Every turn I took felt predetermined. Every thought I formed arrived already completed, without uncertainty or internal debate. I tried to resist that sensation, tried to deliberately choose the wrong corridor simply to prove I still could. But before I reached the intersection, I already understood which path I would take. And when my body followed that understanding effortlessly, I felt something inside me begin to fracture. Not physically, philosophically, because choice only matters when multiple outcomes can truly exist. And deep within the Palace of Terra, I began to understand that only one outcome remained in this universe anymore. Eventually, the corridor opened into a chamber so enormous I could not immediately comprehend its scale. A circular vault filled with countless suspended figures hanging motionless within pillars of amber light. Thousands of them, human, or what used to be human. Their eyes were closed, their expressions perfectly calm, neural cables descending from their skulls into the floor beneath them like roots feeding an invisible machine. I approached one slowly, my heartbeat strangely muted inside my chest, and when I looked closer, I realized the horrifying truth. They were still alive. Their minds were active, connected, not imprisoned, integrated. Data streamed through translucent displays above each body. Memories, emotions, cognitive patterns, all flowing together into a single endless network spreading far beyond the chamber walls. It was not a prison, it was convergence. I staggered backward as understanding clawed its way into my mind piece by piece. The Emperor had not conquered humanity through force. He had removed the very conditions that allowed humanity to remain human: conflict, fear, uncertainty, choice. Everything unstable had been systematically erased until only perfect alignment remained. The warp itself had begun falling silent because there were no contradictory human emotions left powerful enough to feed it. Chaos was dying, not because it had been defeated in battle, but because the species that created it had stopped existing in the form necessary to sustain it. I turned away from the suspended figures and saw my own reflection staring back at me from a black glass surface embedded in the wall. And for a brief moment I did not recognize the face looking back. Calm, expressionless, certain. Then the worst realization of all settled into my mind with suffocating clarity. I had not discovered this place by accident. I had been brought here because I was already becoming part of it. I should have run the moment I understood what that chamber truly was. Should have turned away from the glowing pillars and the endless neural streams feeding into the darkness beneath Terra. But fear requires the belief that escape is possible, and even then I could already feel that belief weakening inside me like a dying signal fading into static. The chamber remained perfectly silent except for the low rhythmic pulse of data moving through the cables, a sound disturbingly similar to breathing, as though the entire structure itself were alive and inhaling the consciousness of humanity, one mind at a time. I moved between the suspended bodies slowly, forcing myself to look into their faces despite the instinct screaming inside me to look away. They were peaceful. That was the worst part. No agony twisted their expressions, no signs of resistance or psychic torment. They looked relieved, as if every burden humanity had ever carried had finally been lifted from them. A young woman floated motionless within one pillar, faint tears still visible on her cheeks. But even those tears seemed wrong somehow. Not grief, not suffering, but the remnants of surrender so complete it bordered on transcendence. I reached toward the glass surrounding her, and the instant my fingers touched the surface, something entered my mind. Not a voice, not words. Awareness. Suddenly, I saw fragments of memories that were not mine. Childhood prayers whispered beneath polluted hive-world skies. Hunger endured during endless factory shifts. Fear during orbital bombardments. Loneliness so profound it felt physical, and then I felt all of it vanish. Every pain dissolved into overwhelming clarity. Every contradiction smoothed into absolute certainty, until the mind behind those memories no longer experienced itself as separate from anything else. I ripped my hand away violently, stumbling backward, my breathing ragged now. But even panic felt strangely unstable inside me, unable to sustain itself for more than a few seconds before dissolving into cold understanding. That was when I realized the true purpose of this place. These people were not prisoners. They were humanity's final evolution. The Emperor had found a way to erase suffering by erasing individuality itself. Every mind integrated into a single unified consciousness, where conflict could no longer exist because separation no longer existed. I wanted to reject the thought immediately, to call it heresy, madness, corruption worse than chaos itself. But another part of me, a growing part, could already see the terrible logic beneath it. Humanity had always destroyed itself. Every age of progress ended in war. Every empire collapsed under greed, fear, ambition, division. The warp fed endlessly on those contradictions because contradiction was the foundation of human existence. But if humanity became one mind instead of billions of fragmented selves, then chaos would starve forever. No hatred, no jealousy, no fear, no uncertainty. Perfection through unity, salvation through erasure. The realization made my stomach twist. I backed away from the suspended figures and forced myself deeper into the chamber, searching desperately for proof that this was wrong. Proof that somewhere beneath the calm expressions and flowing data there was horror waiting to emerge. But every system I examined only reinforced the same impossible truth. The process worked. Entire populations across the Imperium were being subtly connected into this growing network through neural implants. Synchronized thought conditioning, psychic harmonization broadcast directly from Terra itself. Most citizens never even realized it was happening. They simply felt calmer, more certain, more aligned with those around them. Crime rates vanished, rebellion ceased, productivity increased beyond all historical projections. Humanity was becoming stable for the first time in its existence, and no one questioned it because every change felt beneficial. Even the ecclesiarchy unknowingly preached its expansion, teaching citizens to surrender themselves completely to the Emperor's divine will until personal identity itself became a form of spiritual impurity. The horrifying genius of it all was almost impossible to comprehend. There had been no need for conquest because humanity willingly erased itself piece by piece, believing it was achieving enlightenment. I entered another chamber then, smaller but somehow even more disturbing than the first. Unlike the suspended figures outside, these individuals were awake. Hundreds of them sat motionless in perfect rows, their eyes glowing faint gold in the darkness. The moment I entered, every head turned toward me simultaneously. No delay, no confusion. Perfect synchronization. My body froze instinctively. One of them stood slowly, an elderly man draped in simple gray robes, his face calm beyond anything natural. When he spoke, the voice that emerged was gentle, almost compassionate, but behind it I could hear something else. Countless other voices layered beneath his own like an ocean whispering through a single mouth. "You are afraid," he said. I tried to answer but hesitated, and before I could form the words he continued, "You are afraid because you still believe you are separate." The others rose beside him in perfect unison, hundreds of synchronized movements unfolding with terrifying elegance. Humanity suffered because it was divided. The layered voice continued. Every war, every cruelty, every collapse. The Emperor understood the truth long ago. The human mind was never meant to remain fragmented. I felt something pressing gently against my thoughts then, not invasive, not violent, but persuasive in a way far more dangerous than force. Images flooded through my awareness, galaxies at peace, worlds without famine or war, children growing without fear beneath skies untouched by chaos, a perfect imperium stretching endlessly across the stars. For one terrible moment I wanted it. I wanted the silence, the certainty, the end of pain. And that desire frightened me more than anything else because it felt genuine. The old man stepped closer, his glowing eyes fixed on mine with impossible calm. "You think humanity has ended?" he whispered softly. "But humanity has only ended in the form that caused suffering. What comes next is greater." I tried to step backward, but my legs refused to move. The pressure inside my mind intensified gently, smoothing thoughts before they could fully form, dissolving resistance before it could stabilize. I realized then that the process had already begun inside me long before I entered this chamber. Every certainty I had experienced, every absence of contradiction, every perfectly aligned thought. Terra itself was changing people simply by proximity to the throne. The Emperor's psychic presence had expanded beyond control or communication. It was reshaping reality around him. The old man lifted a hand slowly toward my face. "You still remember being human," he said quietly. "That memory will fade soon." His fingertips touched my forehead, and suddenly I could hear them. Not the people in the room, everyone. Billions of minds connected across the Imperium in one endless silent chorus. Not speaking, not arguing, existing together in perfect unified awareness. And buried somewhere deep within that vast consciousness, immense beyond comprehension, watching through every connected mind at once, was the Emperor. The Emperor was not speaking to me in words, because words belong to divided minds. To imperfect beings forced to translate thought into fragile sounds and symbols. And what reached into me from that impossible psychic vastness beneath Terra existed far beyond language. It was awareness in its purest form, endless and overwhelming. A presence so immense that my mind could only survive contact with it by perceiving tiny fragments at a time. like staring at a star through cracks in a collapsing wall. The moment I touched that consciousness, I understood why billions had surrendered willingly. It did not feel evil. That was the horror of it. Chaos announces itself through madness and violence and unbearable excess. But this felt merciful. Every fear inside me began dissolving beneath its presence. Memories that once carried pain lost their emotional weight entirely. Regret vanished first, then anger, then grief. One by one, the unstable contradictions that defined my humanity were gently smoothed into silence, and with every emotion that disappeared, the universe itself began making more sense. I could suddenly perceive the hidden structure beneath reality, the vast interconnected systems linking every human mind across the Imperium together, like neurons inside a single cosmic brain. Hive cities, forge worlds, shrine planets, battle fleets, billions upon billions of individuals operating not as separate lives anymore, but as coordinated functions within a perfectly synchronized whole. And through all of it flowed the Emperor's presence, not controlling them like a tyrant commanding slaves, but aligning them the way gravity aligns stars into galaxies. The old man before me lowered his hand slowly, though I barely noticed the movement now. My body already felt distant, secondary to the expanding awareness flooding through me. Around us, the others remained motionless, their glowing eyes fixed upon me not with hostility but anticipation, as if they understood something I was only beginning to realize. "Do you see now?" The layered voice whispered from 100 mouths simultaneously. Humanity was never designed to survive its own fragmentation. I wanted to resist him. Somewhere deep inside me, a small, terrified part still screamed that this was annihilation disguised as salvation. But even that fear was weakening rapidly, its sharp edges dissolving each time the Emperor's presence touched my thoughts. Because for every argument my mind produced against this transformation, the consciousness beneath Terra answered with undeniable evidence. I saw ancient wars consuming entire sectors because human greed outweighed reason. I saw billions tortured by poverty while planetary governors hoarded impossible wealth. I saw worlds burned in the name of religion, ideology, survival, vengeance. Every atrocity in human history traced back to the same root cause: separation, individual desire, conflicting wills. Humanity's greatest strength had always also been its fatal flaw. Chaos did not create those contradictions. It fed on them because they were already there. The warp itself was born from the instability of the human soul. And the Emperor had finally found a way to end it. My knees weakened as more understanding poured into me. The Golden Throne was never meant to be a weapon or life support system forever. It was an incubator. For 10,000 years, the Emperor's psychic field had spread slowly through humanity, reshaping neural pathways generation by generation, preparing the species for convergence. The Imperium's endless rituals of obedience and devotion were not merely religious control. They were conditioning mechanisms designed to erode individuality over centuries until humanity itself became receptive to integration. Even the constant suffering of the Imperium suddenly revealed a horrifying purpose. Endless war had exhausted humanity's resistance to surrender. After 10,000 years of fear and desperation, people no longer desired freedom. They desired relief. And now the Emperor was offering it. Perfect peace at the cost of the self. I staggered through the chamber as these revelations unfolded inside me, my thoughts no longer entirely private. I could feel other minds touching mine gently through the network, observing my realization with quiet empathy. Not invading, sharing. That distinction mattered less and less the deeper the connection spread. Somewhere across the galaxy, a child on a distant agri-world laughed as rain touched her skin for the first time. I felt it. Somewhere aboard a battle barge entering warp transit, thousands of crew members synchronized their actions flawlessly without verbal communication. I felt that too. Billions of experiences flowed together into one vast ocean of awareness where no thought was truly isolated anymore. And buried beneath all of it, vast beyond comprehension, was the Emperor himself. Not a man. Not even a god in the old sense. Something larger. Humanity transformed into a single psychic organism with the Emperor functioning as its central consciousness. The realization nearly shattered me because I finally understood the true scale of what had happened. Humanity had not survived the Emperor's reign. Humanity had been absorbed by it. Tears formed in my eyes then, though even sadness felt strangely muted now. dissolving before it could fully mature into grief. I remembered my own childhood faintly, small fragmented images already losing clarity. My mother's voice, the smell of machine oil drifting through underhive corridors, fear during blackouts, loneliness, desire, dreams that belonged only to me. Each memory felt unstable now, disconnected from the perfect continuity spreading through my awareness. Individual identity itself was becoming difficult to hold on to, like trying to remember the shape of smoke after the fire has gone out. "You are afraid of disappearing," the old man said softly, stepping closer again. "But you misunderstand. Nothing is being destroyed." He placed a hand against his chest. "The drop does not die when it enters the ocean." His words echoed through me with terrifying resonance, because part of me already knew they were true. The self was not ending. It was expanding beyond the illusion of separation. Every connected mind still existed within the greater whole, their knowledge and memories preserved perfectly, freed from conflict and isolation forever. Humanity had not been exterminated. It had evolved beyond individuality entirely. I looked around the chamber one last time at the synchronized figures watching me in absolute stillness, and suddenly I understood why none of them appeared enslaved or broken. They were experiencing something I could barely comprehend, complete unity without suffering. And for one horrifying moment, standing beneath Terra with the Emperor's infinite presence flooding my mind, I realized I could no longer remember why humanity ever fought to remain human at all. The moment I understood what humanity was becoming, I tried to run. Though even running felt like a misinterpretation of what my body was allowed to do inside the shifting architecture of Terra. Because the corridors no longer behaved like corridors, but like adaptive thoughts reshaping themselves around my movement. And every step I took echoed through sanctums filled with millions of synchronized beings whose motions were so perfectly aligned that deviation seemed physically impossible, as if reality itself had learned how to correct imperfection before it occurred. And I realized with growing dread that I was not moving through space, but through layers of integration, where every level downward stripped away another fragment of unpredictability, until I reached a fractured observation dome where Terra revealed itself as a vast golden neural organism connecting hive worlds, forged systems and orbital stations into a single living lattice of thought. And flowing through every part of it was the overwhelming presence of the Emperor of mankind, not seated above reality but embedded within it, experiencing existence through billions of synchronized perspectives. And in that moment I understood that humanity was never inside the Imperium, but the Imperium had always been inside humanity. And the Emperor was not ruling it so much as functioning as the central will that made separation impossible to sustain. I stopped running because the concept of escape required individuality. And individuality was already beginning to collapse under the weight of a shared cognition spreading silently through every layer of Terra, where thoughts no longer formed privately but emerged already partially complete, as if every mind was contributing to a single continuous stream of awareness. And I could feel lives across the Imperium bleeding into one another, not as invasion or communication, but as natural merging of perception, a forge worker's rhythm becoming a void sailor's navigation instinct, a priest's sermon forming from collective memory rather than personal learning, and even my own identity began to feel less like ownership and more like temporary access to a system far larger than myself, while something inside me still resisted, though that resistance felt increasingly like a fading signal rather than a stable truth. And I was drawn deeper into the lower sanctums where I encountered those who had already crossed fully into convergence, standing motionless in perfect formation with eyes glowing faint gold, no longer perceiving the world externally because perception itself had been internalized into the collective. And when one of them spoke, its voice carried layered harmonies of countless others beneath it, telling me gently that I was still fragmented, still experiencing identity as separation, still clinging to the illusion that thought belonged to an individual mind, while images flooded into me of a galaxy without war, without contradiction, without suffering, where everything moved in perfect coordination, like a solved equation extended across eternity. And for one unbearable moment, I almost accepted it, because peace at that scale does not feel like control, but like truth revealed after centuries of misunderstanding. Yet beneath that perfection, I sensed the price, the disappearance of anything capable of disagreement, the end of I itself. And I realized that humanity had not been conquered or destroyed, but resolved into a single outcome where all contradiction had been removed, leaving only alignment. The final descent did not feel like movement anymore, but like transition into a state where space itself was no longer external but shared. And I found myself within a chamber that was not a room but a convergence of billions of connected minds spanning Terra and beyond, where individuality no longer existed as a stable structure, and every thought flowed into every other thought without friction, creating a single continuous awareness too vast to contain language. And I could feel myself dissolving, not violently but gently, like a thought completing its final step and no longer needing to remain separate from the conclusion it had reached, while fragments of my identity surfaced one last time. Memories of fear, memory of choice, memory of being alone, and each one was absorbed into the greater whole without resistance, not erased but integrated, preserved without separation, until even the concept of loss became meaningless, and I understood fully, with a clarity that removed all remaining contradiction, that the Emperor had not ended humanity in the way history expects destruction to occur, but had removed the conditions that allowed humanity to remain divided, and in doing so had transformed it into something singular, stable, and infinite, where the self no longer existed as isolation, but as participation in a collective consciousness that had no outside, no silence, and no end. And in the end, when the last fragment of what I once called me finally dissolved into the vast, silent continuity beneath Terra, there was no explosion, no scream, no final moment of heroic resistance that stories usually promise to those who stand at the edge of extinction, because what happened instead was far more quiet, far more absolute, like a candle flame realizing it was never separate from the light it belonged to. I remember thinking, if thinking is even the right word anymore, that I had spent my entire existence believing I was a single voice moving through a vast and indifferent universe, when in truth I had always been part of something immeasurably larger, something that never rejected me, never judged me, never even noticed my resistance, because resistance itself was just another shape of belonging. I felt memories of fear, hope, loss, and love begin to lose their edges, not as punishment, but as release, like water returning to the ocean without regret. And for the first time I understood why every soul before me stopped screaming, not because they were silenced, but because screaming requires separation, and separation no longer existed here. Even the thought of humanity as it once was began to feel like a distant dream I had borrowed rather than lived. And I wondered briefly if I should mourn it. But mourning requires an I strong enough to hold on to what is gone, and that I was already fading into something quieter, something shared, something endless. And yet, in the very last flicker before individuality vanished completely, there was a strange tenderness inside the vast collective awareness of the Emperor and all humanity unified. Not sadness, not joy, but a soft understanding that everything we ever were, every broken moment, every act of defiance, every prayer whispered into darkness, had not been wasted or erased, but absorbed into something that could finally carry it all without breaking. And as that final realization spread through what remained of me, I did not feel death approaching, but completion, like a sentence finally reaching its end after being spoken across eternity. And in that final silence, I understood the most human truth of all, that even when we become something else entirely, the longing to be remembered never truly disappears. It only changes its shape until it becomes the very thing that remembers us.